Good afternoon. Today we are closing off our series interview Transformational Change in Colleges and Universities with PhD entrepreneur Alexander Gorelik. The last interview is devoted to the topic communication of the change, process, roles, and platforms. Alex, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Ksenia. Good to be with you.
Thank you. Let's start. Based on previous interview, you attached great importance to communication. So why do you think the communication is so important?
Well, I think communication is important in any change management process because managing change is primarily about communication. Let's recap what it is that we're talking about here. We're talking about educational institutions changing or having to change on several fundamental dimensions. These are going to be strategic changes in how they deal with the students, how they recruit students, how they serve students, how they relate to students throughout the cycle and post-graduation. Next is going to be the strategic changes in how the learning they provide is delivered, and in fact, how the learning is defined. In many ways, successful education institutions will be forced to redefine what it is that they provide for students. We talked about how in previous conversations, we talked about how colleges and universities will have to figure out how to deliver micro-learning and macro-learning successfully to very different populations of students. And in many situations, they will have to target only one of those two populations. So that's a big change because that will in turn involve drastic changes in how we recruit students, how we structure student services, how we structure our curriculum, how we design and deliver and assess our courses, how we hire faculty, how we assess their performance, how the college administration is going to work. So almost every aspect of organizational management in educational institutions is going to change if they want to come out of this crisis successful. But how successful this change is will depend on something that is called organizational capacity for change, or OCC. It's a familiar term for anybody who is involved in management or change management or project management. Organizational capacity for change is simply the capability of a business, of an organization, to prepare for or respond to an increasingly unpredictable future, increasingly volatile environmental context in which they operate. And this is precisely the situation that educational institutions are faced with today. The future is increasingly unpredictable. We can anticipate different versions of it. We can take steps to prepare for it, but we can't know for sure which of the versions of this future is going to happen. And so organizational capacity for change, our business's capacity to prepare and respond to this multiple possible scenarios of the future is key to our ability to cross this chasm, to come out of this change period successfully. But organizational capacity for change is not something that is inherent to a business. Organizational capacity for change is typically thought of as having three parts. So first, formal systems and procedures. That's your protocols, your formal procedures that you implement managerially. These are important to compensate for spatial and temporal blindness that we all have as businesses and as leaders, as managers, by identifying feedback loops and drivers for change, drivers of change, excuse me. These are identified through organizational dialogue and understanding the welfare of the whole system. To put it simply, you cannot identify drivers for change, you cannot identify effective feedback loops unless you know what your employees, your employee groups and your employee informal networks talk about, what they think and how they feel about various important aspects of your business's operation. So this is this depends on effective communication, right? Next, organizational capacity for change depends on what human skill sets and human resources your business has. And in this dimension, you as a leader will have to mobilize, take stock and mobilize your human resources by providing them with some sort of an inspiring vision of the future, right? That's we talked about this before. That's one of the most important roles of a leader, to inspire their employees. Small changes can produce big results here. And so a good leader looks for optimal levers of where to apply this inspirational pressure, tipping points in Malcolm Gladwell speak. And that depends on effective communication as well. And then the third aspect of organizational capacity for change is organizational culture. Organizational culture is simply values, norms, and patterns of behavior that exists in our organization. The central issue here is that fundamentally any change management, especially in an educational institution, is not about changing IT systems or changing curriculum or changing our recruitment how our recruitment campaigns are applied. But fundamentally, it is about changing how our administrators, faculty, and our students feel, think about what we do at our institution, what it is that we are about. So organizational culture is about the change in organizational culture is about changing how people feel, how they think, and how they behave, changing their behavioral patterns within an organization. And one of the central issues here is whether or not those who are not driving the change, those who are not change agents, those who are not in a formal leadership position, perceive change as an opportunity for growth, perceive it as a benefit, or perceive it as a threat to themselves. And most people start in a position where they perceive change as a threat. So that's one of the most difficult tasks for a change leader, to move the critical mass of the employees from the perception of change as a threat to perception of change as an opportunity for growth, to move them from passive resistance to enthusiastic buy-in and participation. Theory says that you need to have to ensure that the change, to ensure change and to ensure that the change is lasting, you need to have about 20% of your employees in the camp of enthusiasts. So you need to have every fifth employee needs to be enthusiastic about the change in order for it to take hold. That's not an easy task, and it 100% depends on your ability to communicate change successfully. So, organizational capacity for change, the three aspects: human resources, skill sets, formal systems and procedures, and organizational culture. All three depend on successful communication. So I would submit to you that the successful change management exercise, which is what we are discussing in our conversation, depends 100% in all of its aspects on communication. Communication is central to this process.
I agree with you. Yes. And what's the role of communication platform in this transformational process?
Well, if communication is if we make an analogy between communication and lifeblood of a system, right? If we say communication is the lifeblood of any complex system, any complex modern business, which educational institutions most certainly are, then communication platforms, the IT, the IT layer that drives this communication, is certainly the cardiovascular system, right? Because these are the channels that deliver the dialogue that is happening in an organization, right? And the quality and the capacity and the affordances of these systems can either enhance the dialogue or inhibit it. The affordances and the capacity of these systems can either ensure that organizations learn from their experience continuously and continuously model different competing scenarios of the future, and then are able to prepare for them, or they fail to do that, and then the change process becomes very, very problematic. The problem, Ksenia, is that we all say that organizations learn from their experiences, and that's correct. That's valuable. But the problem is they never learn from. They only learn from the consequences of the decisions that we made. But organizations never learn from the consequences of the decisions that we never made, that we could have made, right?
Yeah.
And to simulate these consequences, to help us better understand what could these consequences have been if we made these alternative decisions. That's one of the most valuable features of modern organizational communication systems. Ideally, you want a system that affords decentralized data collection in multiple points throughout your organization. Centralized storage of this information, right? Storage and processing. And then flexible, decentralized presentation, customized, or at least customizable to whatever role the user of this presentation is fulfilling. And luckily, there are plenty of fantastic offerings on the market that fulfill this role, including Power BI, a very, very, very popular choice among businesses, and I'm happy to see it being adopted by educational institutions, both colleges in which I'm affiliated with have started deployment of Power BI to various degrees. So there is some progress there. The problem for educational institutions is that for too long we have been we sort of made do with various legacy systems that were disparate and didn't talk to one another very well. We couldn't combine the data very easily. The user interface was horrible, and that did not help their adoption throughout organizations. I hope this is going to change very soon. It will have to change very soon, very quickly, because those of educational institutions that will come out on the other side of this crisis alive will have to be 100% data-driven organizations. That's one of the aspects of the change that we are discussing here. So that's how I see the critical importance of communication platforms in this change process.
Alex, thank you so much for interesting interviews and constructive answers for my question. But I'm very pleased that we continue to discuss the constructive answer in future.
I would be very interested in continuing this dialogue. Absolutely.
So I hope we will continue.
I'm ready when you are.
Okay. So thank you so much and see you.
Thank you, Ksenia.